You're watching the Desert Moon Hockey Podcast with Matt and Rich. Welcome back to episode 11 of the Desert Moon Hockey Podcast with my host, Matt, and I'm your co-host, or other host, I should say. I keep saying co-host, but I think it's just other host. Other host, which is Rich, that is me. We have quite a few topics on today's episode. We are going to be talking significant news about the Coyotes, which is that the city of Tempe approved to begin the preliminary talks about the $1.8 billion project having to do with moving the Coyotes to Tempe full-time. We even got a statement from Gary Bettman, which was pretty significant. Tons of people in there talking about it. We'll go over all that information. Even Matt himself got to go speak with him and his wife. And yeah, it's looking very promising. It's a good time to be a Coyotes fan. Very touchy-feely. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure to let everybody know we're a smaller podcast. I would like it if you could give us a like, a follow, a subscription on whatever platform you're listening to us on. It would really help us out, and it would go a very long way. After that, I usually kick it off to you to decide the topic, but I think you only got one topic to choose from, so why don't you start us off?
Well, I guess I'll just go ahead and cut you off with a nice little factoid. Ever since I shaved down to just a mustache, we've grown like 3 or 4 subscribers in a couple of days on YouTube alone with no additional with no additional advertising. So I just want to say it's now the Stash Cast. Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, so let's talk about this city council vote 5-2 in favor of moving forward with negotiations. So one thing that I just want to get off the bat right now, because there's been a lot of confusion of shady dealings behind the scenes and whatever. This is just the standard legal process. When there's I forget what the period is specifically called, but you are not supposed to engage in conversation, contact, whatever, city officials and the prospective builder. And then the lawyer, I forget his name. Was it Nick Wood? I'm terrible with names. Woods, but he was told 2 different council members went to go say hello to him at like different functions, and he I can't talk to you, and walked away. Thought that was pretty funny. Also, I do appreciate that disclosure. But there was nothing shady going on there. They put forth their proposal. City of Tempe, of course, gets to look over it, gets to think about what questions they might want to ask. And this was, hey, should we engage in negotiations or not? So nothing was going on behind the scenes. It's just a weird legal thing where you have to not talk. The Coyotes aren't allowed to engage with like the city of Tempe, the public. They can't go door to door. Like, it's just, that's why it feels weird. If you got a problem with that, please do not hesitate to contact like your local representatives and be like, hey, is there a way to change that? And if there is enough noise there, maybe stuff gets changed. Maybe it doesn't. That's on you guys. But I thought that was one thing that got mixed up a lot. So that's a standard procedure. Anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, did you have something to add? I was going to get an 8-hour slog.
So I was just going to say, on top of that, so one side couldn't speak, and then all the contrarians were allowed to speak to Tempe, which is ridiculous. How can a contrarian bring up their opinions, and then the people that are pro for whatever aren't allowed to talk about it? That feels a little weird.
Well, it's a weird system, because one thing is I had my wife, when I was still driving home from work, she was listening to all the different comments, the public comments, and I was like, all right, give me how many yeses and nos, and out of the first 6 or 7 nos, by the time I got home, we turned it off. All but one were woefully misinformed, so that's also why I don't like the process, because people, for one, weren't actually reading it. Even some people that were pro it were getting some minor things wrong, so I really wish that more people would have been reading into the actual proposal. I got some things wrong as well, but it's kind of, I'm not well-versed in legal speak and legalese, as we like to call it here, so I do not know how to interpret a lot of it on my own, which is another reason why I think it's a really weird process. But without wasting any more time into that, it caused a lot of confusion, and it is weird to have people that are not informed on it. Like, I don't know what's going on, but I know I'm vehemently against it, which is the joke I share with my wife, because I'm like, that's what it comes off as, is it's like, you don't know what's going on, but then again, it's also a byproduct, of that process. Anyway, what was it, 8.5 hours?
Yeah, 8.5 hours. I joined in about 30 minutes late, unfortunately, so I missed Gary Bettman's remarks, but I did end up hearing some quotes from him on Twitter afterwards. Uh, I think it started at 2. I joined in about 2:40, but I got to hear a lot of the significant news about what all the contrarians are trying to spread their information that is just woefully bad. And yeah, it is. It looks like a good deal. Like, to me, there's nothing that Tempe would be on the hook for if it were to fall through. Mr. Morello is he's not, because this is the funny thing. The QB lady, I don't remember her last name. One of the contrarian QB, yeah. She was one of the no votes. She put up like this weird little pamphlet where it's like, oh, this is Morello Group. Look at how much money they can get for loans. It's like only $5,000. This is scary. It's like, they never said that they were going to take loans. Look at how it's structured. He's backing this project with his own assets. If it goes through, his own assets are screwed. Do you really think he wants this to fail? You know, it was so crazy to me. I'm like, why are you even bringing this up? Like, they're not crediting anything. And then on top of that, the other contrarian point was with the city of Sky Harbor, which is hilariously bad. If they were to go through with this project, the only thing that really scares me is that if Sky Harbor tries to sue this project, that would slow down the process. We would be wasting maybe a year, maybe 2 years on flipping legal problems. But when you look at the I can't remember what the agreement was called. It was a 3-letter acronym. When you look at that agreement, they're not breaking any rules. The only rules that they're breaking is a temporary crane, which is going to be at 26 days long, where it will pierce the one-engine flight height for, once again, 26 days. And if they time that properly, all of a sudden that pierce of 26 days, if they do it in the wintertime, it doesn't even really matter because the planes can lift well above that. The reason it's like that is because during the summertime, obviously hot air, hot engine, you kind of can't cool off the engine as easily if you were to, for some reason, lose one engine. That's why it takes a lot longer to lift off when it's summertime. So there is like some concern, but it's 26 days. And as they just showed, the Coyotes showed, on the other side, on the Phoenix side of the airport, they already did this. They already did this with a project of similar height in the similar decibel range for residential. Like,
but also, just to kind of throw in real quick, I want to say it was Mr. Gutierrez towards the very end. So there's a disclosure there. It was a long thing. I might misremember a couple of things, but they even specifically mentioned that they could even lower the height of that crane. And it pretty much, like, they were even talking about, because one of the very logical questions, actually, surprising side note for me, I'm someone who doesn't particularly care for governing bodies. I surprisingly think this Tempe City Council is reasonable. They actually sounded like they cared. But they asked, what happens if there's a conflict here? And it's like, we'll work with them. And they even mentioned towards the very end, I can't remember if it was Gutierrez or Woods, but mentioned how they can lower that crane height. And there's different things that they can do. On top of that, Miss QB also mentioned the residential and there's a funny little interaction super late where one of the councilmen was like, you got to keep filibustering, and she got very Karen-esque, but reasonably, if you say yes to negotiations, part of your negotiations could be, well, I want to get rid of this residential, which I think would be a good idea anyway, just to avoid any of the headache, because from what I gather, 85 to 90% of Sky Harbor's beef was with that residential. I think per some of the agreements, the city of Phoenix would be on the hook for providing some sort of sound blocking with the construction. I forget what the exact wording was.
Noise deadening.
And noise deadening, there you go. And then also they would have to notify anyone moving in that you can't make noise complaints. But even though that those were facts that were stated, and we know, they still proceeded to bring up, oh, well, we'll get all these noise complaints to it. It was a couple public comments primarily, but
Yep.
we'll get noise complaints to this, our amazing airport. I used to work there 2 different times, mind you, so there is a bit of disclosure as well. I don't think it's that nice. I don't like Sky Harbor. Anyway, but a lot of these concerns really were just, we'll work with them. It's stuff that we can work out in conversation. The no vote, I forget the other woman's name, but I think she had some valid concerns, but some other
Starts
ones
with a
that
G.
stuck out to me that were weird, like, oh, maybe I'm a little uncomfortable with the what was it, PFP they put out? I forget what the acronym was, but it's RFP, but to see if anyone wants to build on that land, and brought up, oh, we're landlocked. This is the last big land we have for a project or whatever. And theoretically, I kind of get where she's coming from, but at the same time, does that not also in some way, shape, or form suggest she did not do her job properly the first time? If she's saying now, oh, I don't think we thought this properly through, or I have some problems with that declaration we put out to see if there's any potential builders that want to use that land. To me, I get what she's trying to say, but it comes across to me like, then you should have done your job better before. Like 6-7 months ago, you should have thought this through more. And on top of that, if now all of a sudden you're concerned with housing, which I do understand, even though I thought some of the citizens of Tempe bringing it up was a little weird, the whole affordable housing thing, the Coyotes are already going to make a contribution towards affordable housing outside of the area. You don't need to have that additional residential. Here, if I were the Coyotes, I would be like, hey, you guys want more community-oriented stuff? We'll remove the residential and do like this some sort of like community thing here for you. I would do that just for the negotiations. That's my personal view on it. It's just, I thought it was weird. I thought it was just kind of weird the way they were bringing it up.
So what I was going to say is, like, what's so cringy to me is you had 2 no votes, right? One says, we can't do this. Let's chop the residential off because of Sky Harbor. The other one's saying, let's just completely can the deal and put residential there. It's like, what are you going to do? So that's what doesn't make sense to me. You're talking about a literal landfill that has to be filled 30 feet deep, has to get pulled out and then put in with new dirt. It's going to cost over $140 million. Are you really going to spend $140 million to get this 42 acres back up to par, then put low-income housing on it that you potentially might not even be able to do because Sky Harbor will try to sue you? Really? Like, you're not putting a tower there. You're not building a massive tower for more living space. This is, like she made the reference, let's not put a square block into a circle hole. This is the only circle that can go into that circle hole. That's
also why I would pander to it and be like, hey, here's a little community center thing. Or I wouldn't be like, hey, we'll build this so it's more community oriented, because one of the other concerns was, hockey games are expensive, which these current tickets are kind of expensive because it's a 5,000 seat arena for the one they're playing in right now. Even though they're selling pretty well. I want to talk about that later. I do want to mention that later. But me personally, I would just pander that way and be like, look, we'll do some community-oriented stuff. We'll do a community center. We'll do something that the community themselves, they can use, and it's accessible to anyone. That's what I would do. I'd get rid of the residential, keep the hotels, obviously, because that's going to help bring in a lot of money. But the community thing would also go a long way to build goodwill, as well as be like, okay, your major concerns were that people wouldn't be able to use it. The residential, in terms of like affordable housing, rents going up, as well as Sky Harbor. To me, just back in my mind, I'm not a lawyer. Anyone that is a lawyer can look at me and be like, oh, you're an idiot for this. Please comment below. But to me, that seems like the most logical, reasonable, here's the first step to try to get as many of the issues that were brought up dealt with. Like, that's the way I'm thinking on it. But all that being said, I genuinely feel like the council did a very good job asking the right questions. I do appreciate a lot of the support and the mindset behind it, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. And the TLDR was, we at least owe it to, I believe it was a gentleman that made the filibuster comment. He said we owe it to our constituents to at least move forward with negotiations and then get their opinion, because then the Coyotes would be allowed to, go into the community.
He even brought up a quote from you too. I don't know if you heard that.
Well, I don't know if he was referencing what I specifically said or what Tyler said, because we both said the exact same thing.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's like, I love that mindset. Same thing with, I forget his last name, I apologize, the city mayor, Corey. He seemed like a very, very cool dude.
Is it just Wood? Corey Wood?
Was it?
I think,
I'm blanking, I apologize.
I think it's Corey Wood, and then our attorney was something Woods with the S.
So he was like, something my dad said, Corey, it never hurts to talk. It's just a conversation. And I loved again, coming from my own personal beliefs of not really caring for governing bodies, it seemed so ridiculously logical to be like, it's a conversation, moving forward with negotiations, these concerns. Essentially, the mindset was, without the exact wording, let's see if we can find compromise here. And worst case scenario, we can't, and we move on. And I liked it. I liked that mindset, because that's all this was getting approval to have those conversations, be allowed to converse on the matter. And it was a huge win. I'm not gonna lie. I had to hold back tears throughout a lot of it, because you get people coming up sharing their stories, and they were talking about how much hockey means to them, and something I can relate to quite a bit. I mean, I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for hockey. I wouldn't have met my wife. Way too many. I'd be a completely different person. But it's hockey means a lot to this community, and as much as I've had, and I know I always bring it up, I've had disagreements with Coyotes fans about like what players they'll idolize or whatever. I can't deny the passion. I genuinely can't, and it's kind of that same heartwarming feeling I felt in the 2010 playoffs, where it's like I got bullied for being a Coyotes fan, but then I look around. Who effing cares? Because look, all these people here to support it, everyone excited and there to support something you love. Like, man, that's something that I can't put into words how much I appreciated.
Yeah, something that really won over the council, it seemed like to me, because quite a few of them brought it back up to the point, was all the people that came up saying how the Coyotes push their lives for the better. So we had Lindsay Fry come up, who talked about she's the first, I don't know if she's the only, but she's the first Arizonan to win a winter sport medal. She won a silver medal with women's hockey as an Arizonan. I can't remember what his name was, but he came up and talked about Pride Pact, which was a LGBTQIA plus hockey group that kind of brought that community together and gave them a sense of pride to play with each other in hockey and connect further, And there was the last one, who was a veteran. I think he was a Marine, who helped start a league here in Arizona to help veterans have a sense of purpose, because as he was talking about himself, when you get out of the military, unfortunately, suicide rates are quite significant for those service members, because they've been trained in this mindset of, here's your task, do this task, and once they get out, they don't have a task anymore, and unfortunately, bad thoughts happen. Whereas with hockey, with that team effort, that bonding effort, you're working towards a goal, and it really connects with a lot of service members, which I could absolutely see that. So I think that's where the Coyotes probably saved their skin, was all the community outreach that they do. I think really showed to Tempe, hey, this is a group of people. It's not just, oh, this is a sports team that's just going to come here and make a bunch of money. It's also a sports team that does truly care and wants to give back to the community out of the greater Phoenix area as a whole, not just not just Glendale, not just Phoenix, not just Tempe, like the whole valley.
I would very much just like to, with no disrespect, I'd very much like to move on to a couple of the concerns with how the deal is structured, just primarily because that kind of that's kind of hard to here for me. I just no real personal reason except for I find myself empathizing with things I don't understand fully.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about how the deal is structured and how it's all on the taxpayers, going on the taxpayers. So how the deal is structured is they want to. I think it's an 8-year period of Mr. Murillo not paying property tax. Then once the property taxes kick in, is it half of the percentage that would go to Tempe specifically? So the schools still get theirs, the county, the state, whatever. But the portion that I think it was 6.9% or 7 points,
something like that. It can be worked out.
They want most of that to go to be rerouted to help paying for the costs of the construction. Same thing with sales tax is going to be an additional 6%. So that's not just the Tempe sales tax. That's an additional fee. The thing's going to be a little more expensive, and it'll essentially help pay for itself, like Mr. Woods was explaining. Where it's like that money will go to help paying off the debts or whatever for the construction costs. And there was one valid concern by the other lady that said no, was that essentially Tempe's not going to be seeing benefit from it for a while. And I'm like, in a way, yes and no, because they want part of that. And again, it's negotiable. It can be a higher percentage going back to Tempe, but of the percentage that does go to Tempe, they want part of that rerouted. So if you're same thing with that 6.9% that tax the Coyotes will be implementing on property. If you are not going to a game, if you are not going there, you're not buying beer, buying a jersey, buying a ticket, you are not paying for this whatsoever. That's how they wanted it structured. They wanted, what was it, $30 million in help with the
land remediation.
Yeah, remediation. I want to say restitution. That is not the correct word. That is not the correct word whatsoever. But remediation for the land, the Coyotes putting up $40 million, non-refundable. So theoretically speaking, this is just the cynic in me. The city of Tempe could vote to move forward. They can go with the agreement. They could take that money and it'll help remediate the land, and then just say, yeah, we changed our mind. Theoretically speaking, just keep that in the back of your mind as a cynic, because it's always best to at least have the worst case scenario in the back of your noggin there. But they non-refundable. On top of that, they do want help with the infrastructure, and it sounds logical to me. Like the way they made it sound, it was like, what is it? It's sewage, gas, the electrical lines all going towards the project. Like that's
yeah.
What they want help with.
So I want to talk about that a little bit, because one of the two ladies that said no, she was the one who brought this up, saying all of our previous projects, the builder pays for all the sewage and stuff like that. With sports venues, that is not the case. So this is a very big kind of misconception that she had, because as you look down the Tempe Town Lake, you look at all these big, beautiful projects that they built. I'm sure those builders probably paid for sewage, electrical, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at all of the venues here in the valley and mostly over the country, that's not the case. The city pays for that proportion, and then the venue, pays for whatever, whether it's funded by taxpayers or it's privately funded. So that is not the case. That's why she's like, she's thinking of it as like the buildings that are down Tempe Town Lake. She's like, all those buildings we didn't have to pay for this. Why do we have to pay for this one? Well, that's why. It's because it's a very common practice and very standard that arenas are, generally speaking, the city function of them with gas and sewage and water and stuff like that. That is generally paid for by the city. The
and
other thing,
other stadiums are completely publicly funded as well, where it's like everything is publicly funded, including, I think, in most places, the maintenance and running, because obviously you pay a company. I think like ARG comes to mind just as an example. They'll come in, they'll hire everyone to like manage the arena and make sure everything functions, but you're still paying for that.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say too was that the naming rights would also go to the city of Tempe, which they projected out over $120 million over the course of that time, where they are getting tax breaks. The city of Tempe would also be receiving that money. So it's one of those things.
It's a large. It's a pretty good amount that that they quoted, but just to throw that in there in case it gets misquoted, it's a portion of the naming rights. It's still significant, but
I thought it was the full naming rights.
From what at least just from how I interpreted what Mr. Woods was saying, it was towards the very end of the meeting, if I remember correctly. He listed that back off, and he said also a percentage or a portion, or however he worded it, but of the naming rights goes to the city of Tempe, estimated at, what was it, $350 million? Don't quote me on that. I'm just trying to.
No, it was less than that. It was so taxes was going to be like 140, like so. So if you projected out the taxes, it's like they would owe the city of Tempe after those 8 years or whatever the math was. They would owe them like 140 million, and then the naming rights came out to like 120 million. So the offsetting cost was about 20 million, and the reason they did that was because of the way they structured this business. So it wasn't just because like, oh, we're gonna scam you or something. I mean, it could be, but we don't know the ulterior motives there. But to what he was talking about, and it seemed pretty logical, the way they've structured this bill or this whatever, they had to do it that way because of a lawsuit that had happened previously in years past because of something to do with taxes. I don't remember exactly. I'm not like a tax expert like he is. But I did perceive it was like it's structured this way because of that, where they had to take those tax breaks in order to not get sued, and then in return they're going to try to throw money back in with the naming rights to Tempe, and that's money that is just cash in hand.
And then going back to the infrastructure, that is the only portion, that and then remediation for the land are the only things the Coyotes are specifically asking taxpayer money for. Everything else would be so I kind of agree with Craig Morgan here, where it's like, the money you make on property, that extra like sales tax, that makes logical sense. The city of Tempe wouldn't be making that money if the arena wasn't built. So it's like nothing is going on the city of Tempe's books. They wanted to be very specific about that. They didn't want to take just for the construction of the arena itself or the hotels or anything, stuff that Murillo is going to make money off of. They just need help with the remediation and the infrastructure. And to me, it makes logical sense. I do understand any potential concern from residents of Tempe. I genuinely do. But when you look at how a lot of other deals are structured, this seems logical to me. And yeah. I have an inherent bias, obviously, as a Coyotes fan, but especially how they are going so far out of their way. Again, theoretically, because it's entirely possible there's a bunch of loopholes and little asterisks that are in the contract now that they would get ironed out or not ironed out. So always keep that in the back of your mind as well. But just on the surface of it, it seems they are trying so hard to avoid burdening any taxpayers with the actual billionaire's playground portion of it. The arena and anything else. It's just it seems logical to me. It just does.
Yeah. The talking about infrastructure, the only thing that really concerns me or scares me about this arena is the traffic proportion. People brought this up multiple times, and I do agree. It is something that is a little nerve-wracking because you are putting 46 acres of people, and you have two crossroads, essentially. And on top of that, one of those crossroads you won't even be able to let out onto because phase 2, it won't even be done by the time the arena's up. So essentially, all those 16,000 people are coming off of onto one road, and that one road is a 2-lane each way, I believe, which is Rio Salado. The other crossroad, I can't remember off the top of my head, is Val Vista. I don't remember. The other crossroad, though, you won't even have access to directly until phase 2 is done, and phase 2 is obviously a phase 2. So that is the big concern to me, is being able to get all that traffic dispersed. You're talking about 16,000 people leaving all at once. That's a lot of traffic. Now, granted, they do want to put significant investment. This was another crazy thing. You want to talk about the people of Tempe worrying about, oh, why do we need another arena here? Well, firstly, they're putting $2 million of their own money into the low the pot of low income housing. So Tempe has a pot of low income housing where they take that money and they, I'd assume, try to buy like cheaper places and then use that for I can't remember what it's called. So you have like stamps, right? That's for your food for people that are low income. But then you also have another project where you can buy like an apartment and then you only pay like $600 a month to it. And the city takes the hit because of the pot. I forget what that's called, but I had a family friend who had to do that. The other thing is that they're putting that $25 million, or they're putting $25 million into the light rail project for Tempe. That's something that everybody's going to get to use. That's not just Coyotes fans. That's not just the arena. That's $25 million into the project to extend it to help lighten the load on the surface streets. Because if you've been to Tempe, yeah, the surface streets aren't great. With that being said, though, you can fix them. You can fix them quite well.
You can also ask the Coyotes to help pay for fixing that as well as part of the negotiations. Another reason why voting yes to negotiate was a good idea. You bring up these concerns and you can bring those up in negotiations. You can have the Coyotes help pay. On top of that, I just wanted to throw this in here. I don't know if it's finalized or not, or if it's just part of what they propose, but your ticket would also serve as fare onto the light rail, which would also help to ease costs for a lot of people that couldn't afford parking. That the price of gas, we have no idea if it's going to keep going up perpetually or eventually stall out like it was for a while about a month and a half ago. We don't know at this point, but that would really help ease the load on a lot of people and also make games a little more affordable.
I wonder if that means, now that you brought that up, because I forgot about that, you said that there's going to be fare associated with tickets. I wonder if that's all tickets. So let's say you have a ticket, right? And you never take the light rail, but you're still paying for the fare. I wonder if that's a way, like, you know how we have gas tax, right? And that's tax that's on top of every gallon of gas that goes towards, like, ADOT for upgrading our roads and stuff. I wonder if they'll do something like that where essentially that fare will be a tax for the light rail.
It could. Like I said, I don't know exactly how it was structured. I just remember them bringing that up. I also might have read one of the tweets. I forgot her name. She did a phenomenal job working. She works for PHNX, and she was essentially reporting all the major stuff as it was happening.
Yeah, Kirsten Susel.
Kirsten Susel, thank you. And that was one of the bullet points I was reading. And I'm like, I think that's a really good idea because just a little side note, because if you watch the clip, you'll know where I live now. But I'm far West Valley, and I don't know if I'm going to renew my Rattlers season tickets next year for a couple of reasons, and it has a lot to do with like parking. It's a little more manageable because it's only 8 games, but like my wife wanted to do this like summer pass to the D-backs, $99 to get all their access to remaining summer games. Not sponsored, just it ties into what I'm talking about. And I was like, okay, so let's say we have to go to like 19 games, right, to make it worth it for us. Just think about parking alone if we're paying on average $10 a game. Just off the top of my head, that's $190 if I'm not stupid. But we usually park in the garage that's right there. I think it's like $15 or $20. It also depends on who they're playing. Whatever, it goes up, goes down. Yeah, and it's
food.
But part of me is, I'm looking at that and I'm like, also because I'm going part-time at my job, it's like I might not re-up my Rattler season tickets, and that's 8 games. So especially like this kicking in and it's going to help people that might not be able to drive all the way out there. It might be too expensive if the light rail's extending, especially it depends where they're extending to. It should be in a logical way. The East Valley, it's pretty good with how the light rail is positioned and with buses being able to get you to it. When I was living on 35th and Northern, I had to go to the airport when my car broke down, and I would take a bus to the light rail station, light rail to the SkyTrain, the SkyTrain in. It was a bit of a pain, but it was relatively convenient for not having any access to a vehicle. So just from personal experience, that's going to make it a lot easier on people just getting to games, or people that might work over there, people that might, they don't have to live in Tempe. They can live in Mesa. They can even some people could live in the West Valley and have a part-time job out there if it's relatively simple to get to, depending, again, how they extend it. So I think that's a really, really good thing. I really do hope that they're willing to invest just a little more. I don't know the specifics, But I do hope they're willing to invest just a little bit more in that. 'Cause that's a phenomenal idea. That would also just help more people. It would show, again, community outreach and positive impact.
Yeah, so train systems historically have always been hard to become successful. The biggest thing is that you just have to have enough. That's the problem, is like if you only have like 3 stops on the line, like very rarely are you going to have people get on this thing. But as you build it out and make it more bigger, like you make it more larger, that's when it'll become something much better, and that's when more and more people will use it. So that is a really good thing. Another thing I was going to say, I need to stop saying that. I catch myself when I'm listening over to the podcast to edit it. I say that way too much. I need to stop. Another thing is that the bad traffic situation can be fixed, because if you look at the roads in Tempe, they're already still pretty wide. You go to downtown Phoenix, you're talking, 1x1s through major streets, and we're also talking about one-ways in a lot of directions. So I think the city of Phoenix has helped alleviate the traffic problem in their downtown area. And that's a much smaller roadage. With Tempe having a little bit larger roads, I think they can get it figured out. I think they can get it done. I'm not too concerned to the point where I'm like, there's no effing way that they're going to fix this. I think they can fix it. So I'd hold our horses before we start screaming the sky is falling on the roadways, because I think they can be fixed. And also, as we're talking about with the train situation, the more you move that light rail around, the better. The more people will be inclined to jump on it.
And then just on top of that, one thing that Craig Morgan also specifically mentioned, there's an on-ramp right there, right next to where the arena would be. It is pretty much the only, the main way in and out, so obviously there is still more work to do. But at the same time, at the very least, that's a pretty valuable tool to kind of, you can account for that, to be able to try to find an efficient way to get people, even if you do, I know you don't go, well, I know you do go to Glendale, but I don't know if you go from the back way where you have that ramp that added on, so it's an exit and an entrance from the freeway just directly onto that ramp to bring you directly to the Cardinals and the Coyotes arena.
Yeah,
they
Cardinals
could also
way.
look into something like that. There's plenty of things they could do. I just hope that the Coyotes are, once again, willing to also make further contributions. It's just going to help their likelihood of getting things done. So. Is there anything else about the deal that you wanted to talk about, or do you want to go into Gary Bettman's statements?
I had one more quick thing I just wanted to say. So
right.
When we were talking about the airport, something that I didn't bring up was that the biggest fuss with the airport is that there's essentially, if you look at the airport, as it gets out, there's rings, and those rings are essentially decibel noises, and so as your decibels are louder and louder, you can't build residential around those rings. You technically could, but you'd be a jerk, because once you get those decibel ratings to a certain level, it's no longer about insulating noise. It's trying to stop shake, because that decibel is so loud that your whole building will shake. Where it is currently located, those decibel ratings are within acceptable tolerance to be in a residential area. What the Sky Harbor is trying to do is they're trying to bait and switch by adding a new map that they just took, a few years back, and show how much more their decibel ratings have expanded because they've gotten larger engines, newer planes, things like that. And showing that essentially in the noise contour, if you're within the 65 decibel range, you're allowed to build residential. But as at 75 or 70 decibel, I can't remember which number it was. We'll go with 75 just to make it easy. That as at 75 decibel range creeps into your residential area, you no longer can build there, because at 75 decibels things start to shake. Your windows start to shake. You can't stop that noise. The thing is that is not. First of all, that is not what Tempe and Phoenix agreed to. They agreed to the noise contour of the map from 1999 to the projected 2004 map. So in that time frame, they had projections. That's what those two cities agreed on. This this is the funny part. So, Mr. Woods used it as like a smoking gun, and then we also had somebody come up and argue that it wasn't a smoking gun. His smoking gun was, hey, the Sky Harbor doesn't really care because they told you they don't really care about the residential area. They just want to get out of this agreement so they can lift off more planes. How do I know this? Well, here's a projection. They're trying to build the runway longer so that they can land and take off bigger planes, which obviously bigger planes, more noise. They can't lift those planes off that tarmac because of the noise accordance agreement that they already agreed to. Somebody came up and was like, oh, this plan has already been out there for months. This isn't a smoking gun. It is a smoking gun because if you're going to extend that ramp, you can't take anything larger off. You would be breaking that agreement. So are you already so Sky Harbor, are you telling us that you're already willing to break that agreement in order to lift off bigger planes? Or is it that you want us to break the agreement so that you can lift those planes off now as you already are preparing to expand the southern runway, right? This is where the ulterior motives are. This is the smoking gun he's talking about, is that proportion. Not that the runway is getting larger. That's not the smoking gun he's talking about. The smoking gun he's talking about is that Sky Harbor wants to lift off larger planes and not give a crap about Tempe. And how do we know this? Well, then he went into that second part of it. How do we know this? Well, they built high-density residential in the 65 decibel noise cone on the Phoenix side and didn't fight that at all, right? Because they know that in the 65 decibel range, you can build insulation that will reduce that. When you take their own map that they upgraded in 2016, so they showed, hey, look, this doesn't work for the Coyotes. Your high density is within our new updated cone that you never agreed upon, but we're going to complain about it. When you take that map and you overlay it back over the Sky Harbor, the city of Phoenix side that they just approved, the Phoenix high density residential that they put over there, is it within that new updated cone? So technically, they should have thrown a stink at that and shot that down, but they didn't. Why? Because they don't have a noise agreement on that side. Phoenix doesn't give really much of a crap about their noise ordinance nearly as much as Tempe because it's two neighboring cities, right? And man, it's just so scummy because you also have to remember too, on the Phoenix side, they can lift off however they want. They don't have gates. So essentially when you take off, imagine on a vertical plane, right? Your plane is down here. As you're taking off, you have to hit, like, essentially you're going through the rings in like a flying game. That's essentially what you're doing when you're taking off.
Superman 64 on my podcast. Get out of here.
Yes, you're essentially doing that, but in real life. So you're taking off. I mean, imagine you have two runways like this. This is the southern one. This is the northern one. As they're taking off the southern runway, Tempe's right here. You have to like fly around Tempe in an S shape, and they don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to have to do that because, I'll get a little technical here because I know a lot about aviation. As you're taking off, right, you're going up this southern runway. They have to bank in order to do that. Well, as you bank, if you're not at a certain speed, it's a lot harder to do. You'll end up in a stall and crash. If you're taking, remember, they're extending the southern runway. You're taking a larger plane. So let's say you're taking like a 4-engine plane, and you're trying to take off. Well, if you're not at a certain speed, you can't bank. It takes longer. You have to get to a bigger speed, then you can bank. And so probably my guess is they don't like this agreement because they want those planes to be able to take off without penalizing, because like, let's say your gate's over here. There's no way that this big plane's going to be able to hit that gate because of how big it is. And I think that's what their ulterior motive is.
All right, so for the normal people in the audience, like myself, I just
realized we have an audio.
You.
We have an audio proportion. They probably heard nothing that I was talking about. I hope you could follow along. I was using my hands.
For the normal people in this audience. I could have told you this. I may or may not have said it before. I know I was saying it privately. The only reason Sky Harbor would have any problem is if they have something to gain. That is it. Sky Harbor is essentially a giant corporation. You have to treat them like a giant corporation. They're going to look in their best interest, and it always comes down to money. All right, so let's talk about that. And on top of that, the whole noise thing, I also just wanted to bring this up just for, again, us normal kind of dumber people. Planes make noise anyway. As someone who lives within the range of Luke Air Force Base, all right, it's funny. It wasn't that bad when I actually lived right next to it on 135th in Glendale. Now that I'm further away, I could hear it like down the road. But you're gonna hear that noise no matter what, and the people that live there will just get used to it. They only complain when you first move in. But just to get off this stupid topic, all right, not to disrespect you or anything, but just to respect the time.
Calling me out. I'm passionate about aviation, okay? I'm a Part 107 small UAS drone pilot, so I know exactly what they're talking about with all this crap, so I'm passionate. I'm heated, okay?
He's talking like someone was bringing up Sonic the Hedgehog lore to me. Side note, don't ever say Shadow is Edgy the Hedgy. I will have a 50-minute conversation with you. Anyway, so let's talk about one of the other valid points that Lauren Kuby did make, but it's not about her, it's about Gary Bettman. So TLDR, Gary Bettman, 30-year no movement clause if this does go through. Secondly, we're going to get the draft. Thirdly, we're going to get the All-Star game.
Allegedly on those two.
So, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. Rightfully so. Lauren Kuby did mention that was promised to the city of Glendale. It wasn't her. It was someone else in there. I want to say it was one of the public comments that mentioned 2012 specifically. It was actually 2005 we were promised it, and then we were promised a reschedule around 2012 or 2013, whatever it was, and that never happened. So that was a valid point to bring up, and I'm just going to use that valid point to go into my own skepticism here. I don't trust a word Gary Bettman says. I know everyone, the meme is, oh, Bettman loves this team. He'll never let this team leave. He works for the owners. It's the other owners. Fifth largest city in the country. The U.S. dollar is stronger than the Canadian dollar. They want the game to grow and the market to grow, not to just stay where hockey's already popular, because you already have the teams there that are going to make the money from those people, as well as stuff like Quebec. You're already still selling Quebec merch, and the team hasn't existed in like 25 years. All right, we already know about that. Let's get on the topic of this specifically. We've been promised an All-Star game twice before. It never happened, and I'm gonna say it with a little bit of bias towards Glendale here. Maybe if an All-Star game would have happened, let's say they would have rescheduled it, the earliest would have been 2009 after it was canceled in 2005 because they're planned out like 3 years ahead. Let's just go with 2009, and it would have happened there. Possibly, we might have been able to avoid that bankruptcy, and possibly Glendale could have been more on the map for hockey fans. Doesn't mean it would have, all right? That would be stupid to say, but I'm saying I think it's a possibility it would have been better off than it was, and I think that because we were told we were going to get it twice before, I don't trust this. I trust the 30-year no movement for a couple of reasons, and I've already listed them exhaustingly, and almost every time we talk about it. The size of the market, the other owners seeing the strength in the market, they want the game to grow. Austin Matthews, yada yada.
All the business that's coming here, that's another thing. Don't forget about that.
And also, Tempe is still, you get into bed with ASU, you're going to make some money. All right, let's be completely honest about that. I completely am on board with that. I love the reaction by primarily Canadians. The amount of people that when they just saw that report, oh, just put us out of our misery and move this team already. Who's the one who's miserable? The person that is angry that a city will get to keep their team? Or the people that are, pardon my French, effing excited that this team might actually finally have that long-term stability. And yes, in 2052, we can talk about the Quebec Nordiques again, okay? I look forward to those conversations. But seriously, I understand people are mad because they're stupid, but I love that 30-year. I love that to the bottom of my heart. Ever since I was a kid, I've always just dreamed of, like, I want this team to be like the Suns. I never see the Phoenix Suns leaving here. If you were to tell me that the Phoenix Suns were going to move in 2032, random year out of my behind, I would laugh uncontrollably. All right, and people brought up, oh, they've never had an All-Star game or been to a Stanley Cup or they never won a championship. The Suns haven't won a championship. They've been here for over 50 years. They're just fine. And the Phoenix Roadrunners, in their different iterations, won like 3, and they're not here anymore. So championships doesn't matter about whether the team's going to leave a long-term impact.
Yeah,
it
Pittsburgh.
helps.
The Pittsburgh Penguins were on the brink of bankruptcy and being moved, and they won championships. Like, championships don't matter. Stability is what matters. Yeah.
So I love that 30 years. Cry about it. I know I want to get a little away from the Canada slander, but it was too juicy for that one. But the All-Star game and the draft, straight up, I will believe it when I see it. And I think that was the most valid point Lauren Kuby had, was because Glendale was also promised that, and look what happened there. So I will fully I'll give her that point.
So let's clarify why that didn't happen. The reason why wasn't just like the NHL went, psych, we're not doing it. In 2004, 2005, the NHL had a lockout, meaning that the owners locked the players out of playing. And that lasted the whole year. We lost an entire season because of that lockout. And because of that, the Coyotes did not get their All-Star game that they were promised. That's why they initially lost it. And just to remind everybody, that's about the time that the building was built, was what, 2003, 2004?
Yeah, it opened in the late 2003. It was like December was the first game, or was it? It was the 03-04 season. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
we had like a half season in that building, and then it was shut down for an entire year, which was devastating. But as you pointed out, they rescheduled for 2012 and then canceled that because the team was on the brink of bankruptcy. At the time, the team was owned by the NHL. Kind of hard to, hey, come and check out this arena that might not be there and next year. Like, it's a bad look on the NHL. That's why they never did it. They never went back. Unfortunately, the Coyotes have had an era of bad luck because of that. 2007, we have the housing crisis, the stock market crashes, or whatever, and Arizona was the second worst hit city in the United States from that recession, which is real sad. But anyways, let's not be on Depresso Espresso topics.
I can always go sad boy hours. You know me. I'm a fan of this lovely logo. All right, I am here for the sad boy hours. But that's why, in my opinion, it should have been, because I think it's 2 to 3 years out. So I think it was like Super Bowls or whatever where they schedule out. That's why I thought they should have just scheduled it for around 08 or 09. And at least in my opinion, that would have been very advantageous timing. And I just don't know. And just to answer any potential questions, my personal theory, so there's a little asterisk there, as to why we never got another one rescheduled after 2012 when that new ownership group came up, probably had to do with the relationship with the city of Glendale was not very good at that point. I think that was when they were doing their year-on-year. It was around 2014-15 that started, right? It was Ice, Arizona.
So that's actually a great point, because I wanted to bring up that this was another concern that Tempe had, some people had, was, oh, look at how poorly they treated Glendale. How dare they do this to Glendale? Let's remember who threw the first stone in that relationship. The Coyotes were so desperate to make it work in Glendale that they were willing to change all of their branding away from Phoenix to Arizona. They changed their branding to Arizona Coyotes to appease Glendale. And they desperately wanted to get in bed with them. They were, like you were saying, living year to year. They wanted to get a contract for 15 years to play in Glendale. They got that contract in like 2012, 2013. I don't remember the exact years. I'll be honest, they all blend together in my brain.
It's all just pain.
Yeah. They finally get that contract from Glendale for a 15-year lease. And what happens 2 years into that contract wasn't the Coyotes who broke it. It was Glendale. Glendale broke it. And on top of that, might I say, Craig Morgan reported that he went to, I think, 3 lawyers. And the Coyotes had pretty good grounds to go after Glendale for that break, saying that it was not a lawful break of that contract. they could have gone after them for a lawsuit for breaking that contract, potentially, do your own research, illegally, and because of it, we start the tumultuous turmoil that was going on in Glendale, where after that break, Glendale was like, at any point we'll kick you out of this arena. You're living year to year. Like, imagine we're watching two partners, right, in a relationship, and we just saw toxic relationships end up in court over this week.
Oh God!
In the first place, right? Imagine you're in a relationship. You're so desperately to get married with this person, and this person just starts abusing you, right? Are we going to blame the victim for wanting to get the hell out of that relationship? Oh, well, they threw some punches back, so they don't deserve it. To me, in my head, whoever threw the first punch is the bad person. If you're defending yourself, if you're defending yourself, I don't care, right? Like, if you're throwing punches first and you're defending yourself having to throw punches back, that doesn't make you both wrong. That makes whoever threw the first punch wrong.
There's a little nuance there. If we're talking about that specific example where it's like if you use too much force, but that's a legal term for legal courts, not for us. Yeah. But I really do like that point. A little bit of charged terminology in my opinion, but I also appreciate the point you were making there. And so when you look at the relationship with Glendale, and I genuinely, I cannot elaborate on this, but just some things I was hearing going on behind the scenes with previous ownership. First off, that first giant group of owners, I liked a lot of them. I was working the parking lots. Their specific little lot where the owners got to go in, so I got to be friendly with them. Not get to know them, like go to dinner or anything, but I got to be friendly with them. They seemed pretty nice. They did not have the money they said they did. It was a lot of, why do you think there was what? It was like 15? It was like 15 owners all together. That's why.
12 to 15, yeah.
So there was that, and then going right into who was the gentleman that was majority owner that sold
Mr. Barroway.
Mr. Barroway. Again, I literally cannot elaborate on this, but there were some things I was hearing going on behind the scenes there, to where those toxic work environment reports as Marullo was first coming in, and as you know, John Chaika is still there. I do completely believe. Actually, I thought when they were published was stupid because it's so outdated, and it wasn't clarified that it was previous regime, previous ownership, previous general manager. And one thing I really wish I would have wrote a statement, because I as soon as I realized they were opening up public comment past those 96, I went blank, my mouth went dry, and I put my wife's hand on my chest, and it was done. So I didn't know what I was going to say. I genuinely wish I would have looked over at Shane Doan and said, that man right here, I did say he's a saint, because he's a saint, but I wanted to look at him and say, this gentleman, I trust him to degrees that probably individuals shouldn't trust other individuals they don't know all that well. But just the fact that he chose to come back into the situation tells me, no matter what problems were before he came back, at the very least, he saw a genuine effort to change that culture. He saw genuine positivity, and he would not just show up in a crap show. I do not think he would. And you could be, oh, lol, because he stayed with the team for so long and it was a crap show. Yeah, sure, that's a pretty funny joke, but I'm talking about actual toxic work environment. He would not say yes if he thought that was still going on. He that is a huge first step in change, in my opinion, and I genuinely just wish I wasn't stupid, and I would have been prepared, and I could have said that, because what that man means for hockey in Arizona, I could have a 30-hour filibuster for you, but just to keep it brief here, just for your sake with editing, that is a huge first step in fixing any problem that there was before, and I wish I would have brought that up.
I want to quickly go over that article that you were talking about. So the article that you're talking about with workplace toxicity, that was written by the hit artist Nun herself, Katie Strang, just desperately trying to get food on the table for her, so she's writing whatever she possibly can. I want to point out the timeline of that. So we know that the previous regime, before Morello and Bill Armstrong took over the head offices, was toxic. And we know this because of Reddit reports, things like that, where people actually worked there and talked about the toxicity under the Chaika administration. Andrew Cohen, I believe, was the CEO. Those two were the head honchos at the top, right? Under that administration, there was a ton of toxicity. I go back to it. I feel like every episode, but I'll keep shouting him out. 99.9 The Howl has something on his channel where he reads over one of those Reddit posts. I highly implore you to go read that or listen to him read it. It's pretty bad. And so to think like, yeah, there's a toxic work culture going on, right? Like let's put this in present tense of what's going on. Toxic work culture, everything's going wrong, like not wrong, but everything's toxic within that organization. Mr. Morello comes in, right? He's now the guy above those two. He is trying to fix this toxicity, right? And it gets to the point where there's butting heads, there's arguments. Yeah, no wonder he's telling people, don't call me Alex, call me Mr. Morello, because if your business is toxic, you're trying to establish dominance. You are the owner. And if people are talking trash behind your back or, doing mental abuse to other coworkers and stuff like that, yeah, you're going to come in and lay down the long arm of the law and be very demanding. And then if you notice, in that offseason, it was so toxic that Chaika dipped when they got into the playoffs. He dipped out. He was like, oh, I'm done with this. I'm going to go pursue something else. And after ruining this team, like emotionally on the ice, and then also ruining the future prospects by sacrificing, what was it, 2 firsts and a second for illegally testing players, right?
Well, that and the Hall trade that we ended up, because the thing is with that Hall trade, I like the point you brought up, but I also like mine where it's like, if you keep him, the trade's fine, it's worth it. If you lose him, you're losing those premium assets that you can't tell me right now. I don't care about how Nate Schnarr is not really that good. I knew it at the time anyway. I don't care how Kevin Ball's just maybe kind of getting his feet wet at the NHL level. You cannot tell me other teams would not have been interested and you couldn't have flipped them for younger assets or more second and third round picks to help even more ammo for the rebuild. And maybe, this is my personal speculation exclusively, they might not have had to get rid of 1 or 2 of the fan favorites they did. Doesn't mean they would not have, but it's a possibility.
Don't forget about who was drafted with that first that was given for the Hall deal. Dawson Mercer. Could have potentially also had him too. But to finish up, no wonder it is such a toxic work environment, and Katie Strang is writing about this and saying that it's all Morello's fault when he inherited that mess. And guess what? In that offseason, he cut the cancer out and he clean swept the organization. Clean swept. Well, he didn't actually. He hired Gutierrez to come in and run the boring business side of it, and then Bill Armstrong came in to run the hockey side of it, and both those two cut the cancer out and completely gutted this organization and refilled it with much more appropriate and well-organized people. So, just something to point out.
There was truth to it, but not anymore, because they fixed it, they saw it, and addressed it. Unfortunately, very, very much publicly, I wanted to at least talk about this. She brought it up in her article as well, and everyone won't shut up about it whenever talking about the Coyotes and their toxicity. They did not do it quickly enough. Unfortunately, Mr. Marullo did think highly of John Chaika as a general manager, as a hockey-type person. We don't know about personal relationships. We at least know about that. I also don't know if he was just trying to save face or not, being like, oh, no, we're behind our GM. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. Like, you don't want to show that you're just dysfunctional in front of the camera. You want to show, hey, I support my guy. No matter what the problem, no matter what the problems are behind closed doors.
But so unfortunately, they did not cut the cancer out before there being an actual loss, casualty, whatever, and that's Steve Sullivan, who's completely incompetent, drafting Mitchell Miller, and now the Coyotes as an organization will always have to carry that because. While Bill Armstrong was technically kind of allowed to talk to the staff before the draft, he had an agreement with the Blues that he was not allowed to participate. and I have no idea how many conversations were even allowed. That agreement was never really fully public, but he agreed not, because so much work with the scouting in St. Louis, he agreed not to participate because it would have been an unfair advantage or some sort of confidentiality, something like that.
He would have had the Blues playbook, right? Which is really unfair. So, like, let's say the way the draft works is you don't have a list of 200 players that you're going to draft in every slot. You have clusters. So in this section, I'm going to draft this person. In this section, I'm going to draft this person. And you don't want to do that because let's say the Coyotes pick at, that was in the third round, the Coyotes pick at 98, and then the Blues are at 102. He could steal whatever the best Blues, the best player for the Blues were at that cluster. Does that make sense? So it's one of those things where they wanted to keep him out for that draft. That way it was all fair. And I don't disagree. Yeah, the Mitchell Miller one was a yikes. Also, cancel culture was going rampant. So just to give some context to Mitchell Miller, he was actually criminally convicted, I think. I don't remember. But he was convicted for bullying a kid who had mental problems and was African American, I believe. I don't know if he would say racial slurs, but the worst of it all was
a lot of racial slurs and physical bullying, and it was disgusting to read.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I remember hearing was that he essentially had like a push pop or something like that and wiped it on a urinal and then gave it to the kid, which is a big no-no. That's grotesque. But with that being said, Mitchell Miller also was persecuted for that and did serve all of his penance for the actions that he did. So he publicly apologized to the child in front of the school district, the school board. So they verified that he did apologize. He did community service. He did a bunch of stuff to try to appease that wrong that he did. Now, whether you should say he should have been drafted or not, that's a fine argument. I probably not. But to say like he didn't like repent for his sins isn't true. Like he very much repented for his sins. He did what the courts ordered him to do, and he did all that. And then meanwhile, next year or the year after, whatever, flipping Montreal Canadiens with the second to last pick in the NHL or in the first round, of the NHL draft. A guy who probably should have gone in the second round, if not later, gets drafted, who also has a shady past because he was having sexual intercourse with a girl and was taking photos and then sharing those photos to his teammates on the team. And you know what he did? You know what he did to repent for those sins? He sent the girl a short text message saying, I'm going to sum this up in my own words, pretty much saying, LOL, sorry. And that's all she got for these heinous things that he did. Yet, notice how the hockey markets, it's Montreal, let's sweep that one under the rug.
That did get swept relatively quickly. I do at least appreciate the consistency. Like, when it first happened, people were rightfully calling Montreal out, which was good. But for the Coyotes, for example, now, and it's been, 2.5 years, are still getting flack. I still think rightfully so. I wouldn't have gone anywhere near Mitchell Miller, primarily because I would have been like, look, I know you... I don't care how you or your upbringing was or whatever. There's no excuse for that, and I think he should have done more of his own accord, not just what the courts ordered him to. But that's just my personal view on it. So I would have avoided him entirely. But you don't really hear about Montreal's pick anymore after it was like a month afterwards. So it is just...
not even that. It was like a week.
All right, 2 weeks. Let's meet in the middle. Let's give him a little bit of garbage for me. You don't hear about it anymore, but even though I'm going to argue rightfully so, the Coyotes still hear about Mitchell Miller. They should still be. I forget. I remember his name, but I don't want to say the Montreal kid's name because honestly, just screw that kid. But it's just. Yeah, no, that's never not going to be a bad look on the organization, and my biggest regret. Well, I had no to say in it, but my regret is not actually looking into the prospect because I didn't know about any of that at the time. Apparently, he came out publicly. You mentioned that a lot of people already knew. I didn't. I don't know if it's because I'm super hands-off with people's personal lives or not. I genuinely don't know, but that's on me. But it's never not going to be a black eye, and my biggest kind of disdain there is they should have also just cut Sullivan before the draft as well, and just the lead scout be like, hey, you're taking over the draft, I'm going to lean on you and see how you do. And I just... Because, yeah, no, Sullivan knew he was on his way out. We all knew it. And he got fired, a month later, if that? It wasn't very long after the draft, because... Not out of spite. I'm not prepared to make an allegation like that. But you can't tell me he was motivated to think of exclusively the best interest of the organization there.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one for me. I think he was just probably not. I'll be honest with you, with how incompetent that front office was. It wouldn't shock me if they even knew about Mitchell Miller and all the problems that he was facing due to all the problems from his own actions. So
anyway, let's move on to a lighter topic, a much better topic, because that got very much not sad boy hours. That just got kind of depressing boy hours. So let's talk about the excluding Josh Doan, but we'll jump on this meme for a little bit. The captain of the Coyotes, Clayton Keller himself, with his phenomenal speech of, yeah, we like playing hockey here, guys. So, they talk pretty highly about this. But look, nothing against him. I just thought it was funny. I appreciate him being there. That, to me, also Chychrun, like you mentioned in your notes right here, Chychrun not being there is a very big thing. We've already been on this train. I don't know if you're 100% on it like I am. He doesn't want to be here. He's gone. I'd be surprised if at the draft he was still day 2 of the draft, if he's still a Coyote, I will be shocked. Genuinely shocked.
Agreed.
But
he has
Keller,
that right.
Yeah,
he has. Before anybody gives him animosity, don't give him animosity. He has that right to feel that way, and I think if he wants out, you should give him that right.
Yeah, so that way we can get value for it. I also appreciate, unlike Darcy Kemper, he didn't publicly say yes, I want out, but you can read in between the lines of what he was talking about in the interview. I'm a little questioning. I think it was Craig Morgan that posted that interview. I'm a little questioning why he would post that, because all it does is just throw it out there publicly. But at the same time, it's not Craig's job to cover for the Coyotes, cover up, trading. But you have Christian Fischer there, who officially, I said it on Twitter, I'm willing to go on record right now, I will no longer call him a bad hockey player, and he is more than welcome to stay in Arizona, because he was there along with Schmaltzy and Kells. And while I do give Kells a little bit of mashed potatoes and gravy, but I do give Kells a little bit of trash, because it was a funny. He lacks charisma, and it's kind of funny, but I still respect the hell out of the guy, because that does show a level of leadership, being willing to show up there and give a statement, because the Coyotes are running out of time. Good to see Schmaltzy there, even though I still would not personally mind if the value was right trading Schmaltzy. With how well him and Keller play, I'd also like to see them just keep them on the same line. That's your first line. Have them be your future. Honestly,
if you want to get into predictions, have those two on the same line. Put Austin Matthews in the middle. Sounds
Chychrun for
like
Matthews, 1 for 1. So I actually do want to segue very briefly into some other Coyotes related stuff. I just wanted to mention that, have a little bit of a laugh, lighten up the tone there. This a acquaintance of mine on Twitter brought up, since New Jersey is allegedly, they're talking about moving on from that second overall pick. And he's like, so if the Coyotes trade up, they can get Slavkovsky and Cooley. I would personally go Cooley then Nemec, because it's two very big needs: a puck-moving right shot defenseman and a center. We desperately need a good playmaking center. He's also got a pretty nice shot on him. But do you think there actually, I know we talked about it before, but do you think there is a realistic possibility of that Chychrun trade factoring into them getting the assets to also get the second? Because in my opinion, if they move up to second, they have to give up third. Like, I would love to see it happen. I don't see them having the assets to have 2 top 3 picks.
I mean, the value is, now we don't know if that value's dropped since the offseason, but the value is 3 first-round assets for Chychrun. That was the asking price. The second overall pick's a big value. You want to talk about first-round assets, that is like 2 first-round assets. Let's be honest here. Like a second overall pick's significant. Chychrun, 1 for 1 for the second, I'd be willing to do that because of exactly what you just said. Second overall pick, Logan Cooley. Third overall pick, Simon Nemec. Or Juracek. I like them both. I think they're, at this point, from what I've seen, Juracek and Nemec are interchangeable. I think Nemec is going to be a little bit higher regarded than Juracek. But both are very good right-handed defensive assets. I could really see that happening. A 1-for-1 Chychrun for the second overall could be a possibility. Yeah.
And then on top of that, we're also getting John Tavares and Sergei Bobrovsky, so we can help Toronto and Florida get cap space. Look, I would love Boob Titsky on this team. I would love it. The memes are right there.
I mean, I don't know what they would trade us, but that could be a possibility. They have a lot of names that need to get re-signed in Florida. If you take Bob off their hands and you throw in a little sweetener, what is that sweetener going to be? Is it
I still want Lundell,
Anton Lundell?
I don't know if Lundell might be too high a value, but if you look at some of the younger players in their roster, I'd even just say screw it and throw in like a couple seconds or something. Like we're taking a lot of cap space anyway. We'll just take extra draft assets. But out of those two, the Tavares one is mainly a meme, but Bobrovsky is a very realistic possibility. There were rumors. I have no idea if there were any conversations. That's not what I'm saying. It was a rumor. But there were some pretty substantial rumors that Florida might have been interested in trading Bob to us last offseason when we really started the rebuild, which is also why I was taking a look at that nice, not really used Anton Lundell over there. Like, hey, he's a setter.
I have a throw something out here.
All right,
what if you trade Bobrovsky and Lundell to Arizona, and in return, Arizona throws you one of their late firsts?
You know what? I'll take that because we're also still going to get other assets with the Chychrun trade anyway. We'd almost be trading like just Chychrun for a pick swap. It depends on how you want to look at it, whatever we get the value out of. I would not be opposed to literally any of that. I'm open for business.
I know that a lot of Florida fans would say go blow smoke up your butt, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying that gets you out of that $10 million contract, right? You still have the goalie of the future in Knight. Yep. Like, it could make sense. The problem is Lundell is never going to be in your top six. You have to pay Huberdeau. You are not going to let Huberdeau go. You have to pay Huberdeau. Barkov is there. Like, your top six is already super valuable. Lundell is never going to get that ice time that he demands to be in the top six. Like, make that very clear. And that can really piss a player off and want to leave. We know this firsthand because we have one in a defenseman who wants to leave.
We've also had centers in the past, like a little-known Kyle Turris that got good and got real bad pretty quickly. Which I also, on the record, I was saying they should have reacquired him last offseason because it would have been funny to bring back a bunch of old names, like as the Coyotes are going into a rebuild. To have, listen. I do not like Keith Yandel. I will completely admit that to anyone that asks. If you would have moved up to a left wing, maybe I'd be a big fan. But I do not like Keith Yandel. I would not have minded them reacquiring Keith Yandel, signing Mikhail Bodker as a free agent, signing Kyle Turris as a free agent, and being like, yo, this is going to be that nostalgia year. What's up?
Or bringing Reader back, or bringing Domi back. Domi's a UFA.
Domi, yep, could have brought him back. Anthony Duclair. If tomorrow you told me Domi and Duclair are both coming back and they're going to stay on the same line, I like Duclair a lot more than I liked Max Domi. I also don't remember why I don't like Max Domi, so I probably am just over disliking Max Domi. I would be completely open to that. And then, just for our final topic, because I know you're gonna mention the time, our final topic, and please make this a segment. Let's talk about the ticket sales. Let's talk about this little chart. I want to make sure to bring it up on my phone so I have the exact stuff in front of me, because the Coyotes very much seem to be selling surprisingly well so far. So I know we talked about it last episode. My wife got an email from the Coyotes for season tickets. clicked on the link, and the glass season tickets, so let's say there are 100 glass seats, they hold at least 50 of them for a season, however many for single game, however many for half season. All right, that is what they sold. They were already sold out of the glass season tickets. There are, even as of right now, no sponsor. There are still some tickets available for partial season, but now the goal line, the goal line tickets, full season sold out. The Den, the cheapest one available, which means I am priced out of season tickets. The Den, both half and full season, completely sold out, and they've been on the market for about a month, right? The amount of times I've had out-of-towners, even people I like a person that runs another podcast, I like the guy, but he keeps trying to give me some garbage for the Coyotes' insane ticket prices because they're cheaper in St. Louis. I'm like, yeah, but we're at or a little bit above league average. That means St. Louis has to be below league average. That's how that works. But he's like, oh, they're really going to sell those tickets. They're not going to sell this building out. All the Canadians being like, they're not going to sell this building out. Well, this is not a confirmation they will. They need to. I completely agree with the contrarians. If there are empty seats, minus like one or two here or there, people don't show up, people reschedule. As long as those tickets are sold, they need to fill that building every single night, because when you have 4,700 seats, which I believe was finalized about a month ago.
What are you talking about, the 35?
Seats, there's 3 seats. There are three giant chairs.
It's actually just 5 bleachers.
But when you're working with such a small number of seats, they need to sell that out. I will not make excuses if they do not sell that out. However, I was shocked within like 2 weeks the season glass seats were sold out. I did not believe my wife. I did not feel like double checking that, which is why I said allegedly last week, like reportedly, because I had this little bit of anxiety in me. I did not want to confirm that. Not mainly because I didn't think it was true. Not that I think my wife's a liar, but I thought she lied to me. But the fact that they have sold out 4 different tiers, 2 half season and 2 full season. 3 full season, 3 full season, 1 half season. Excuse me. That they've already sold that much out. I'm not surprised by the cheapest tickets. They're not cheap, but obviously I'm not surprised by that. Those would be the first if someone's like, hey, can we swing it? Or I'm not surprised by that whatsoever. But the fact that the glass seats were the first to go, the fact that there are 3 separate sections that are completely sold out, like, different tiers.
And we're a month and a half in the off season.
It shows. And I said it, and it was mainly because I know it's true, but also because I wanted it to be more true than I believed it. More money than sense in the East Valley. More people that are willing to spend that money because it's only a 20-minute drive, or I can hop on the light rail, saves me gas, or whatever. It's already selling that well. So if you put a 16,000-seat arena there, I have no issues saying that, hey, you know how they were terrible last year and averaged just under 12K? They're probably going to average at least 13 to 15. They will average damn near a sellout as long as they are competitive when that new arena's built. I have no reservations.
If they're competitive that first season, I think they could easily sell 15 consistently out of the 16,000. Something I was going to say about our tickets as well. They went up in price. They also went up. They went up.
Again?
They went up. The people who locked in those prices have to deal with it going up. So, I'm just saying.
Because supply, demand, and the supply
it's a little
is surprisingly quickly going.
Yeah, it's a little scummy. You're like, oh, wow, you locked in and then they went up on you. Supply and demand.
But the people that already locked in, they got their cheaper prices. It's the people that are now trying to shop for it. But at the same time, that is how supply and demand works. And if the demand is not there over the next month, they'll go back down. That's how it works. I'm not surprised by that. I don't even think that's scummy. I think that's just logical, because anytime... Let's take a video game, for example. If a video game... the price on eBay is $5, 10 copies sell. All of a sudden, since there's demand there, the prices go up, and then once... let's say that $5 game is now 10, no one's buying it at 10 because it's only worth 5 to 7. The demand will go away, price goes back down, they buy accordingly. The equilibrium, or whatever it's called, for the supply and demand curve, they'll be fine. I'm still I'm in utter awe that a month and we have 4 different tiers sold out. 4. Yeah. I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. Part of me thinks I'm being punked, but Obviously, no matter what, like, let's take me cheering for the Suns. I had no doubts they were going to win the championship this year. I had no doubts the Coyotes are going to sell it out. But I could still be proven wrong. And then when you're not, or when things are looking really good, I'm like, we don't get wins like this. I don't understand. But I'm going to run with it anyway because you're more intelligent than me when it comes to this. Can you please put this into context, perspective, and words that just truthfully give it the value that we're seeing right now out of this?
Well, it just shows that hockey does belong in the desert, and I've had to argue this with Canadians on Twitter before. There's a reason why when you go to try to sign your children up to play hockey here in the desert, those programs are sold out within 4 minutes. That's not a joke. That's not me exaggerating. They're literally sold out within 4 minutes. You're talking about programs 5 years ago that would take a week to sell out are selling out in 4 minutes. Unfortunately, the way our capitalistic society is working, the wealth inequality is getting more and more significant, which is sad to see. As a middle class person myself, I don't want to see people left behind. I'd like us to all be smushed into the middle class, but it is what it is. And as people have more and more play money, you're just going to see this. You're going to see more and more people just blow their money on whatever they want because, Joe Schmo, who is making $80K a year, is now making $140K a year. Like, he's going to have the money to spend on all these tickets, and it's good. It's sad to see that the lower income people are going to suffer, but it is it's good for business, I should say. As a capitalist, it's good for business.
And also, my wife used to work at the ice den in Peoria, or Surprise. I think it's technically on the Peoria side of that. I always get those cities confused. But there was always hockey tournaments. There's out of state from like Las Vegas, California, whatever, coming here to play their tournament games, coming here to play. And the turnout would always be large. And there's 5 ice dens that all have the exact same thing of different levels of competition every single day. They're obviously not tournaments every single day, but like teams occupy those buildings and they are playing and they are practicing, and then you have adult leagues and then the free ice time, and it's always like it's pretty busy. I remember when I was growing up, my dad couldn't afford to get me into hockey. He actually ended up, it's like this Coyotes like program or whatever for my birthday. It's like $100 and I got all the equipment and everything. But then he would take me to go do stick time at the ice den, at that same ice den I was just talking about, and I remember it would be a pretty good crowd, pretty sizable, but not like amazing for stick time. So you still had some room to work with. It's gotten busier and busier, and the amount of people with full hockey equipment, there are more and more. And hockey equipment has not gotten any cheaper in the years since then. It just shows that the market is growing. The money is here. People are getting more into it, and it works. It plain and simply works. I'm always anywhere between. I grew up in a trailer as a kid, so between lower and lower middle class. So I know what it's like to not be able to afford like those niceties. But the fact is, there's more than enough people that support hockey here, and it's a good market. And then just obviously the more money goes in to any city or whatever, the better things should get theoretically for everyone with money and taxes and whatnot. Too bad they never actually go where it should, but that's my last political statement.
Yeah, well,
you
that's
can edit that out if you want to.
No. That's actually a great point, though. Like, a lot of people are going to get mad at the ownership group about, why are they getting tax breaks when I don't? It's because those billionaires know where their tax money goes. It gets lit on fire. That's why they'd rather take that money and put it to something more productive, whether it's their own business or it's helping out the community with the foundation, the Coyotes Foundation, improving the light rail system, spending that money into the pool for low-income housing. They'd rather put that money directly into the bucket versus handing their money to the government to pray that they don't go, all right, does this match work? All right, does this match work? All right, does this match work? Haha, I lit it on fire. That's why these really rich people, they have loopholes with their taxes and things like that, because they'd rather put that money into something much more productive for the community and themselves.
And just me on a personal level, I'm someone who would much rather. I think paying for someone's tank of gas is infinitely more impactful than taking that same money and going to like a charitable organization or to any sort of fund or pool, primarily because you can at least see the difference you're making on an individual person. But at the very least, when you have more money and it's going into pools that help multiple people that are specifically for this, like it's not. Let's take that affordable housing pool. It's not, okay, well, any money that goes into this, parts going to this, parts going to that, we're going to redirect this. Not like any other systems. I'm going to avoid more political statements. So, like, not like any other systems, how they work. So at the very least, money going there is directly helping somebody. It is directly helping multiple people. And I actually would not mind if Murillo was willing to put even more into that fund. I would not mind if he was, because he makes a lot of money off sports betting and whatnot, and his casinos. I would be like thrilled if he was like, yeah, I'll throughout this time we're doing more like tax breaks or whatever to pay for this. I wouldn't mind doing more charitable contributions. Yeah, he gets a tax break and a write off for it, but you're also seeing an actual difference made in someone's life, and I like that a lot more. But that's just me. Once again, and I'm not trying to get too political here.
Yeah. Yep. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy world we live in. I think it's time to end our hour and 30-minute conversation.
We do at least it isn't an hour 50. But we only had, I think, 3 topics, and we turned that because we love hockey. You can trust this mustache is always thinking about hockey or a blue hedgehog. Those are the only 2 things I ever think about.
True. Or the blue Roadrunner behind you.
Please, okay, you know what? Let me go on this tangent. You can put it as a separate thing if you want to, like a little small thing just for today, right, on the channel. Please, for the love of anything holy, any god you may or may not believe in, any institution you give your support for the reverse retros next year, do this. Go look at the Roadrunners, at the old Phoenix Roadrunners that played in the Memorial Coliseum. You could do with that. I love the ECHL colors and design. Do that. Do this. All right. I know you're gonna do the Flying Fox. I know that logically because there's no other route to go unless you're gonna think a year after discontinuing it, this is now some sort of retro look. But do that, please. Thank you. That reminded me. Do we have time for another 5-minute segment?
Oh, goodness. We don't, but you can.
All right, so I caught this. I apologize for not putting on the notes earlier. I caught this. Javier Gutierrez. I hate that I keep saying Xavier. I know people that pronounce both ways. But Javier Gutierrez did mention that they want other tenants. Now, I did not hear him specifically say he wants to own other tenants. Now, he might have, but I just heard there will be other tenants. Obviously, the boring answer, here's the first thing, ASU basketball. That's the reason why, and I still never made a video on it, but that's the reason why I'm so confident in this, is because ASU is already in discussions to want to use that building. ASU practically owns Tempe. Not the government, just like everything in Tempe, so as your number one employer, largest employer, largest, essentially driver of the economy, the biggest reason why everyone's there, if ASU wants something, unless it is super illegal or unethical, they're going to get it. So I obviously you get that, but remember all that turmoil going on in Tucson and how they want, because they have higher ticket fees because it's supposed to go to the renovations. They could move them up here. I would prefer they go to where the Coyotes will be playing for the next 3 years, that ASU building, because it would make more sense there to me. But they could bring them up there and do an SAP Center thing, like with the Barracuda and the Sharks. My first reaction, I tweeted out immediately, was the return of the Arizona Sting. Because if the Arizona Sting would have been in the East Valley, I genuinely feel like they would have lasted longer. I don't know how successful lacrosse would be here, but I feel like more cross-promotion, more working together between the Coyotes and the Sting, and if they would have been in the East Valley, I feel like it would have worked out better. There was also, you're not touching the Mercury, because Starver owns the Mercury and the Suns. It makes too much sense to keep them in the same building, but a very small chance you could move the Rattlers over there. All right, a college town would be effing perfect for indoor football. Obviously, it's only like a 20-minute drive, but imagine like it's right there in the heart of Tempe. Oh, hey, we're doing some drinking. Hey, what's going on over here? There's a bunch of people, mobbing over here. Oh, it's a Rattlers game. Well, the Upper Bowl, they sell normally for like $5 a ticket when they want to get more people in. They sell pretty well. They average between like, this year, because it's been a little bit lower, 8 and like 10,000 people a night.
Yeah.
That's more people that, hey, a $5-10 ticket, they're going to go there, they're going to buy beer, they're going to buy, whatever. And that would be a perfect atmosphere for arena football. That would be a perfect fan base. I would love that.
Morello already tried to buy one football team, right? Didn't go through. Just saying. The Atlanta Falcons, I believe it was, that he tried to...
Didn't he own the Hawks at one point? Wasn't he a owner of the Hawks?
Or was the Hawks?
The basketball team?
Maybe it was basketball.
When I first looked him up, he had like a Hawks hat on.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was basketball then. I just remember he tried to buy another team previously, but ended up the funds weren't there. But I'm just saying, if he is interested in other teams, I don't know if he could be able to purchase the Rattlers. I wanted to say the Sting. If he could purchase the Rattlers, that would make sense. I could see that. The only thing is you don't want to fill up that stadium too much with games. Like, you don't want to have it absolutely jam-packed, because I think that it's going to be a premier venue for concerts. If you looked at that tour that they released onto their YouTube channel, man, that is going to be an incredible concert venue. To quickly go over, people, if you didn't see the inside, essentially they took the idea from SoFi Stadium, where there's a band around, and that's your boards to watch the games and stuff. But then on top of that, inside the band, there's a screen in the band, and it, like, when they were showing concerts, that looks like an incredible experience.
It kind of looks like a mix between like the Golden Knights Arena, the Saddle Dome, the Arizona Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Like, with I'm talking about the roof and the exterior design. I did like the amount of copper. I like that coloring, but it opens up possibilities. I mean, even obviously you could do this, and this would be, I think, a lot more fun. Even though I have no idea what it would do to the market. But if the Sugar Skulls, because Kevin Guy owns the Rattlers, he's the head coach of the Rattlers, also owns part of the Sugar Skulls. If they're also having troubles down there, you could bring both the Roadrunners and the Sugar Skulls up here, and then have 2 indoor football teams have a rivalry across the lake, Tempe and Phoenix. Yeah. I don't know if it would be good or bad. It could literally go either way. But I'm just saying, if the possibilities this opens up, and the fact that my first thought was still going to be the Sting, please bring that back. I don't care how poor I get. I will work overtime to get a bunch of stupid Sting merchandise. Bring it back, please. Por favor. I can't say please in any other language. Per favore, I think it is in Italian. Just do it. And/or bring the Roadrunners, rename them the Phoenix Roadrunners. Just take over the old color scheme. Like, I don't know who owns the rights to it. I don't know if it would be like, hey, it's pretty cheap to buy. Get the old colors, the old yellow and blue jerseys with the state logo and everything. Bring that back. I would love that. And it opens up so many ideas. So many great ideas. And you can have, again, that rivalry with the Rattlers and the Sugar Skulls come up here. It's not just the I-10 rivalry where you're going 2.5 hours south. It's literally 2 major metropolitan areas. And more Rattlers fans, because they travel pretty well. The first ever Northern Arizona Wranglers game in 2021, they were facing the Rattlers. I made the drive up just to go cheer for the Rattlers. Everyone that was in Tucson, well, most of them, more than half the stadium that was there, was Rattlers fans. I'm just like, I think it would open up a lot of really cool possibilities. And not to make you any more bored and tired, I apologize. Just
you're boring.
That got me excited. That got me wired.
Yeah, that is another cool aspect of it. Potentially moving other teams into the building. The copper look is incredible. As the copper state that Arizona is, I think that really attunes well with how our city looks and how Tempe looks.
Yeah, anyway, with all that being said, are there any closing comments you have, Sir Richard?
No, not really. We are approaching 2 hours, and I would like to go watch something today. So
I apologize. I get excited sometimes.
that's fair enough. That is fair enough. But yeah, I guess I'll send us off here. So remember to give us a like, follow, a subscription on whatever platform you're listening to us on. It goes a long ways. If you can, leave a comment on any sort of review if you're on iTunes or I think Spotify has a review thing. Give us a 5-star. Anything less is below average for us.
Trash.
So we'd really appreciate it. This is Senior Richard and Senior Matthew signing off for episode 11 of the Desert Moon Hockey Podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.